The original Spyro the Dragon changed my life. And by that I mean it was one of the best video games I've ever played, and in my opinion it even holds up to this day as far as fun is concerned. This game gave young me one of the best adventures I'd ever been on in my whole life. I could replay this game 1,000 times, but the problem is, I have replayed this game 1,000 times. A game that was once so challenging and yet so mesmerising has now become so easy. So like with my previous 2 Can You Beat videos that I did, I decided to revisit this game and see if I can make the game last a little bit longer. What if we take away one of Spyro the Dragon's core ability, gliding? Can we beat Spyro the Dragon without gliding? Let's find out. But first off, here are the rules. The first rule is obvious. Absolutely no gliding at any point in the game. Gliding is performed by jumping and then pressing the jump button again, so we need to make sure to completely avoid pressing jump whilst in midair. This can extend to absolutely no use of Spyro's wings at all. This includes no flying levels. Also, no glitches. If there are any glitches that allow me to get to an area where otherwise gliding would be necessary, I cannot do that glitch. If there are any exploits that allow me to get somewhere where the developers didn't intend me to, then I can do it, but it's a last resort. Lastly, once I beat Nasty Nork, the final boss of the game, we win! But before we get started, I just want to say that making videos like this takes a very long time, so I'd really appreciate it if you charge that subscribe button, tick the bell, and enjoy the video. Thank you. The first thing to understand is Spyro's abilities. If we're not going to be gliding, we need to make full use of every other ability he has. He has a short hop, he can charge, and he can even jump into a charge. This is going to be our best bet for covering distance in the game, but it's still not as good as gliding, so we're going to have to make full use of it whenever we can. The aim of this run is to defeat the final boss, Nasty Nork. In order to get to the final boss, we have to travel through each of the game's homeworlds. In order to get from one homeworld to the next, you have to complete a specific criteria, otherwise the balloonist won't carry you to the next one. And the criteria are all based on the game's collectibles. There are 3 main collectibles in the game. Gems, they're everywhere. Dragon statues, you gotta rescue your fellow dragons. And dragon eggs, you gotta rescue your dragon eggs from these weird little blue thief men. For example, the first balloonist requires you to have rescued 10 dragons. Now this isn't usually a problem since there's way more than 10 dragons in the first homeworld. However, not being able to glide will severely limit where we can and can't go. There are already 4 dragons to rescue in the Artisan's homeworld itself, and that's before we've even gone into any of the levels. And just as a side note, there is a platform in the homeworld with a few gems on it that was intended to be glided to, so I'm just gonna look the other way. Also, in a bit of a grey area with our rules, there are these whirlwinds that are scattered throughout the game, and they carry Spyro upwards. Immediately, as soon as he gets out of the whirlwind, he automatically glides down to his feet. I was skeptical to allow whirlwinds in this run, mostly because I couldn't decide whether the wind caught Spyro's wings, which carried him upwards, but then gliding down to his feet after he gets to the top sealed the deal for me, so I'm going to avoid using whirlwinds whenever possible. Unfortunately, this means the entire level of Town Square is completely blocked off from us. There are still 3 other levels we can access, however, so let's go to the first one, Stone Hill. The main idea in each of these levels is to pick up as many gems as we can on the way, whilst also rescuing as many dragons as we can. A good chunk of this level's collectibles are on the ground floor, so we're able to get most of them. However, there is a whirlwind that takes us upwards to a higher level, so naturally we're going to ignore that. This does mean there are some collectibles we can't reach. But once we've completed everything on the lower level, we're going to go towards the end portal and jump off the edge, and we'll land on a beach. From here we can collect a key. Now normally you wouldn't be able to get back up to the level without using the whirlwind. However, if you just jump in the sea and kill yourself, you will be warped back to the last dragon you rescued, still with the key in your inventory. If you then take this key back to the start of the level, you can jump in a well and use it to open a chest and rescue one more dragon. Now once again we're trapped with the whirlwind being our only means of escape. However, from this point you can just select exit level from the start menu and keep all of your progress without having to use the whirlwind. Dark Hollow is the second level, and it's here we see our first use of the jump charge. Charging whilst in midair allows you to cover some distance and will be our substitute for gliding. This will be the easiest level so far, as we're able to actually 100% complete it, since at no point do you require to glide. Every platform it looks like you can't reach you are able to jump and charge to, as long as you charge at the apex of your jump. The next level contains the first boss of the game, Toasty, and this level is also possible to 100% easily, as there are literally no platforming elements whatsoever. Just travel to the end of the level and beat the boss as normal, no gliding required. This now gives us a total of 11 dragons, which is enough to travel to the second homeworld, the Peacekeepers. There's nothing too difficult on the Peacekeepers homeworld. Everything is collectible, except there is one small platform surrounded by purple viscous liquid that will kill you, and it's a bit too far away to make without gliding, but other than that we can collect everything else. The second balloonist now requires 1,200 treasure in total. Right now we have less than 500. So we've got some work to do. So the first level we're going to tackle is Dry Canyon, and straight away we can see that we need to rescue our first dragon egg. There have been 2 dragon eggs previous to this in the previous homeworld, but they've both been out of our reach. This is the first one we find that's actually on the ground floor. Once you rescue the dragon egg and make our way through the level, it's simple enough to start with. There is, however, a platform we can't reach. And a second one. The path to the end of the level is straightforward, and at the end we can even see a dragon we can't reach. At least we got the dragon egg. Next up is Cliff Town. Once again, getting to the end of the level is very easy, but not only are there a lot of buildings here that you can get to if you could glide, but there's actually an entire half of the map you can't get to at all unless you glide over the giant chasm. So not only are we going to have to skip half the roofs in the level, we're going to have to skip that entire half of the level. We can, however, get our second dragon egg here. Onto the Ice Cavern now, another level where you don't actually need to glide that much. There are 5 dragons on this level and we can rescue all of them. The only real need to glide in this level is to get to this key that's suspended on an island in the sky. Doesn't matter how you approach this key, you won't get it without gliding. Trust me, I've tried. Upon returning to the Peacekeeper homeworld, I then remembered there was a thief with an egg here, so I took him down to get our third egg. Finally, we move on to this homeworld's boss level, Dr. Shemp. And for the first time so far, we find ourselves on a level we're very limited on. Before long, you'll find you can't make any progress unless you ride one of 2 whirlwinds upwards. This puts an early dead end on this level, so we'll just have to cut our losses and leave. We can't even rescue the dragon here. However, regardless of defeating the boss, we still have 1,600 plus gems, which is more than enough to move on to the next homeworld. The Magic Crafter's homeworld now is another simple affair. There are even 2 dragon eggs here, which takes our total to 5. Before entering any of the levels, I check what the balloonist requires to move on to the next homeworld after this, and it just so happens to be 5 dragon eggs, which we already have. But if you think that means we can skip all the levels in this homeworld, you would be wrong. We need as many dragons and treasures as we can find. Trust me, it'll be important later. So the first level we're going to tackle here is Alpine Ridge, and boy was this level unkind to me. As soon as you rescue your first dragon, there are 2 tricky looking jumps. It takes a little bit of practice, but with the right timing you can get a jump charge and make both of these jumps. However, very soon after that, there's a third jump that you just cannot make. I would love for someone to prove me wrong on this, but I tried to make this jump so many times and I failed over and over. In fact, I would go so far as to say as it's not even close. This jump is impossible. And as there are no other directions to go in this level, that brings us to the end. We weren't able to get much done in that one, let's hope there's better luck in the next one. Next up are the High Caves. Straight away we're able to rescue a dragon, and we're even able to jump charge to this roof to get some treasure. However, immediately after that we have these 2 moving platforms. They're very far apart and very difficult to traverse without gliding. After a few failed attempts, I decided to try the other direction, and then I remembered the other direction was full of killer metal ants. Unless you either have the supercharge or the super flame power up, these ants are invulnerable. I didn't want to continue taking any risks, so I decided to move on to the next level. And that next level was the Wizard Peak. At the very start we can see a hidden path to the left which contains some bonus treasure. We can't go this way for long though because there's a whirlwind at the end of it. The rest of the level is fairly straightforward. There are a lot of supercharged sections in this level, and these allow us to make the large jump over to this platform in the distance. It was easy enough getting to this platform, but the only way to get back is to glide. So it's a good thing killing yourself doesn't lose your progress. The only real annoyance about this level is the wizards hide on these balconies high up that we can't reach without gliding. I tried to be clever and use the supercharge to turn back on myself, run back up the ramps and jump onto the balconies, but then this weird thing happened. Once I got to the top of the ramp I lost all momentum, but I was still supercharging. Oh yeah, there are 2 dragon eggs on this level as well. We no longer need dragon eggs to progress the game, but it'd be nice to see how much we can do without gliding. Onto the boss level now, Blowhard. This level is very linear. There are some moving platforms, but they can all be made with regular jumps. And the hardest jump in this level can be made with a jump charge. Other than that, you just chase the boss to the end of the level and defeat him. You can even get 100% on this level, not seen that in a while. And with that we can travel to the third homeworld, the Beast Makers. First things first, we're going to travel to the end of the Beast Makers, collecting as many dragons and gems as possible, and then find out what the criteria is to get to the homeworld after this one. And it is at that point we discover that we need to rescue 50 dragons to progress beyond this point. Up to now we've only been able to rescue 34. And even if we're able to get every single dragon in every level within this homeworld, that would still only take our total up to 44. Things were looking bleak, but we're going to persevere through these levels anyway. I will just quickly mention there are some gems and a key that you can't reach because they're out in the middle of the swamp on a tree stump. It's impossible to get this without gliding, I've tried many times. So let's start with the first level here, the Terrace Village. There are 2 dragons to rescue in this level and we're able to get both of them. So this takes our total dragons to 36. It's only at the end of the level where the jumps start to get a bit more tricky. And there's even a whirlwind to take you to the end of the level, so we can't even get to the exit portal. We have no choice but to quit out from the pause menu. Moving on to the next level, it's the Misty Bog. Straight away I knew this one was going to be a challenge because there's a lot of platforming over swamp water. A good majority of the jumps early on we can make with the jump charge, and we can see where we'd like to end up, the top of this very tall tree stump. Easier said than done. Eventually the distance we need to clear got bigger and bigger. We had to start taking some risks. We were forced to take damage by landing in the dangerous swamp water just to make it from one ledge to another. This meant a bit of health management was needed. Regardless of that, we are able to get most of the gems in this level, and all 4 dragons. There is however a secret route in this level right near the end. It seems like it's impossible to reach without gliding, but with some nice timed jump charges it is possible to get your way up there. Unfortunately, the only way to get down to the tree stumps is by gliding. This means we're not going to be able to get the last remaining gems on the level. However, on the plus side, we do now have a total of 40 dragons. And now it's time for everybody's favourite level, the treetops. This level is infamous for all its supercharges over insta-death pitfalls, but our first challenge is actually getting to the first supercharge. This might be the tightest jump we've had to deal with so far. I failed it several times, but I did eventually manage to make it just by standing on the very edge. The majority of the rest of the level is basically all about chaining these supercharge ramps together to get to other platforms otherwise unreachable. If you haven't built up enough speed, then normally gliding would be your insurance policy, but without that, we basically just need to get good at the supercharging. We're able to collect a decent amount of gems and rescue 2 out of the 3 dragons in this level. There is one platform, however, that is simply just too far away to reach without gliding. I would have made more attempts at it, but we were starting to run a bit low on lives, and honestly the less time I could spend in the treetops the better. Lastly, we have the boss of this homeworld, Metalhead. Near the start there are a couple of roofs we'll never get to without gliding. We can still get the one and only dragon on this level easily though. Also, we can jump charge our way down to this platform in the sewers. This will lead us to some more gems and a key. Normally you can't get back out of the sewers without a whirlwind, but the usual method of killing yourself will respawn you to the dragon you rescued and you'll keep the key. And from there we just win the very easy boss fight. Just remember to open the treasure chest on the left side of the boss room with the key. Now so far, we've visited every level that we can visit without gliding, and we only have 43 dragons. This is 7 short of the 50 we need to progress the game. It was time to backtrack to the old levels and see what we can do. After revisiting some past levels, armed with nothing but more persistence than ever, we were able to rescue 3 more dragons. Do you remember that second awkward jump in Dry Canyon? Turns out you can reach it after all. This helped me get 1 more dragon and a few more gems. And then I revisited the high caves, and I realised I gave up on this level far too easy. First of all, as long as you're quick you can outrun the metal ants. And secondly, after giving these jumps a few more tries on these moving platforms, I was actually able to make it. This basically opens up the whole rest of the level, in which there are a series of supercharged jumps that lead to 2 more dragons. This now puts our total dragons on 46. And this is where we run into our major problem. We have acquired every single dragon in the game up to this point that can be acquired without gliding, and we're still 4 short of what we need. If we're going to pull this off, we need to revisit our rules, and the one that immediately springs to mind are the whirlwinds. I mentioned earlier that the whirlwinds were a grey area, but let's look at them properly. Initially I said they were not allowed because it looked like the wind caught Spyro's wings and carried him upwards, but upon reviewing my test footage, it doesn't really look like that at all. Secondly, I said they weren't allowed because Spyro automatically glides when he gets to the top. However, if you just hold down the charge button, Spyro will automatically charge out of the whirlwind without gliding. With all this in mind, we can probably allow whirlwinds. I didn't want it to come to this, but we might have no choice. It's either this or the challenge ends here. So this means we can now enter the level we had to skip near the beginning of the challenge, Town Square. At first I noticed the town square had 4 dragons to rescue, and that's exactly how many we needed. I didn't want to get my hopes up though, because I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to get all of them. The real problem with this level is that it's basically a gliding tutorial level. There were several wide gaps that required big jump charges to get across, and one of them even had insta-kill liquid beneath it. Clearing these jumps required precision, pixel-perfect timing. But once we'd made all the tricky jumps, we were able to rescue 3 more dragons. The 4th dragon of this level was simply just too high up, and only gliding was going to get us there. With only 1 dragon left to find, we head back to Stone Hill. There was a whirlwind here we didn't use before, but now's the time. We just need to remember to charge out of the whirlwind, but also making sure not to fall straight off the tower. If we hold left whilst charging, we bump into a little wall and we can stay on top and rescue the dragon. And with that, we have finally found 50 dragons. At long last, we can finally get to the next homeworld, the Dream Weavers. I'm happy to finally be making progress again. Oh no. And here it is, all that work we put into getting here, and you can't progress without gliding. You see, before this point, whenever there was an area you couldn't reach without gliding, it was usually within one of the levels, and never within one of the game's homeworlds. If you couldn't complete a level, it was fine, you could just quit out and move on to the next one, or your progress would still count. However, in the homeworld, if you can't make progress, you're stuck. Without being able to glide, we can't get to the next island. Not only does that mean we can't get any dragon or gem in this homeworld, it also means we can't reach any level in this homeworld. Not to mention, we can't even get to the balloonist. It was at this point I had to go away and think for a while. I knew we were never going to make these jumps. I tried it 50 times, and I wasn't even getting close. I had to think of something else. Eventually I came to a compromise in my mind. I'll preference this by saying that if you wish to consider this challenge a failure right here, right now, then you can. You're free to let me know in the comments section if you think the run should die here. But whether it's sheer determination or just morbid curiosity, I decided on the compromise that I would glide this one time, but on the condition that I cannot collect any treasure or rescue any dragon in this entire homeworld. I may only head directly to the balloonist. So that is what I did. After dodging all treasure and enemies, I was able to get to the balloonist and find out that I needed 6,000 gems. I'd barely even reached 5,000. The pain had only just begun. I was going to have to revisit every single old level I didn't get all the gems on and scrape together as many gems as I could possibly get. There were some gems on a high platform in the Artisan homeworld I thought I couldn't reach. Turned out with some practice I could reach them. Remember that platform with the 4th dragon on in Town Square? Well, I learnt about an exploit. If you jump with your back against a ledge whilst spinning around, you gain a tiny bit of extra height. Combine that with a charge at the top of your jump and you gain just enough height to get on top of this platform. This allowed me to reach a bunch of more gems in Town Square that I'd missed before. This wasn't the only jump I didn't realise was possible in Town Square. I even managed to jump on this platform up here with some more gems on it. This was not the intended way to get here. I revisited the second boss level, Dr. Shemp, and was able to use the 2 whirlwinds I couldn't use otherwise. Not only did this lead to some gems, I was also able to actually defeat the boss, who then drops more gems. After getting better at the jump charges, I was able to use a whirlwind in Terrace Village I couldn't reach before to get some more gems. I went back to the high caves to use the Super Flame power-up to take out the metal ants, as they each dropped some treasure. There was a whirlwind in the Wizard Peak I couldn't use before, but now I am, and it's leading me to some more treasure and some tricky jumps. In the Misty Bog level, I was able to use damage boosting to get as far across the swamp as I could to reach the tree stumps that I couldn't reach before. It took numerous tries, but I finally pulled it off. This led to a buttload more treasure. I tried to use the same damage boost tactic in the Beastmakers to get to the tree stump with the key on it, but it just did not work. Do you remember that platform in the Peacekeeper's homeworld that was surrounded by purple death? Well, I had a crazy idea. I decided to combine both the damage boosting and the backwards jump exploit at the same time. Basically, I would damage boost my way over to the platform whilst trying to have my back to it so I could use the backwards turning jump exploit to reach the platform, and after many failures, it finally worked. And I even found a way to get to the platform in the dry canyon that I thought we couldn't get to, just by jumping over a few of these little roofs. I even made a big jump charge to get the last few gems on Stone Hill. These were all the gems I could find after revisiting every single level in the game so far, and yet my total was 5,959. I was 41 gems short. I was desperately searching for any kind of exploit, any kind of developer oversight. But my luck was running out. So close and yet so far. But then, this happened. I never expected to make that jump in a million years, mainly because I'd failed the jump about 100 times. I wish I could have shown you my live reaction to making this jump. I've never audibly gasped so loud in my life. For those who don't know, this is Cliff Town, and normally you'd have to glide here from way up high. But for some reason, despite so much failure, I'd convinced myself this jump was possible. Never give up, kids. And there just so happens to be 53 gems here. This puts our total on 6,012. We can go to the final homeworld. Not only is Nasty's world the final homeworld, it's also the shortest homeworld. There's only actually 2 levels we have to beat before we can fight the final boss. There is a little bit of a difference with these final 2 levels though. We have to actually get to the end portal. Only then will the next level be available to access. This also means that collectibles on these 2 levels are irrelevant. All we need to do is get to the end. First up, it's Nork Cove, which is low-key my favourite level in the game, because you can do this. For the penultimate level before the final boss though, the Nork Cove is insultingly easy. There is an impossible jump at the end of it though that we can't reach no matter how hard I tried, but it turns out that jump isn't even necessary. If you backtrack a little bit, you can actually damage boost your way over to the final end portal. That was lucky. And now the final level before the final boss, the Twilight Harbour. And the most difficult thing about this level were the enemies, because this time they were packing heat. The only part of this level you can't reach without gliding is this platform with 3 gems on it. C'est la vie. And with that we beat the final level. All that's left is the final boss of the game, Nasty Nork. This boss fight has 3 very short phases. The first one involves chasing down these thieves to get 2 keys, and the second phase involves chasing Nasty Nork himself, both of which can be done with no gliding. The final phase, however, sees us jumping over a series of moving platforms over insta-death pits, and some of these platforms can be quite far apart. How fitting is it that the finale of the run be a series of challenging jump charges? I did fail these jumps a few times, but I could clearly see that every jump here was possible. So with enough practice, I got over every single one, hit the final blow, and I beat the last boss of the game. The run is over. Can you beat Spyro the Dragon without gliding? No, you can't. The fact that there is only one section in the entire game where gliding is mandatory is a massive shame. I know I said I'd leave it up to you guys whether or not you consider the run dead here, but personally I have to think it's a failure. My compromise and my continuing of the game was merely just an excuse for me to carry on and beat the final boss. Morally I should consider the run died in Dreamweavers. But hey, you're all free to let me know what you think. Thank you all for watching, this has been great fun and it took a very long time, but it was worth it. And depending on how well this video does, maybe I'll do Spyro the Dragon 2, Gateway to Glimmer. That is what it's called, don't at me. And if you're still here, that means you've made it to the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching the entire thing, and I just want to give a big shout out to all the YouTube members for making this possible. I appreciate all of your support, and they are Dixie Wrecked, Sarah Lee Richardson, Rain Dance Ziggy, James Harrison, Tim Cooney, Spectrum Z, Neon Striver, Donny Vantino, Judith Westerman, Swifty Smithy, Sparkle and Pop, The Dunk 93, Evolved Pixel, Baker Street Gaming, Martin Lewis Dalgano, and Kelly. Thank you all so very much. Please do consider subscribing to the channel, or better yet sharing the video with someone you think might enjoy it. I've also linked 2 more of my Can You Beat videos on screen right now, and you're free to check one of those out if you wish.